Children of the Longhouse by Joseph Prushak. Chapter 11. Before the Game. Ohkwa'ri looked up toward the smoke hole. There was still no sign of the light of dawn. He wondered how any night could possibly be so long, especially in this part of the year when Elder Brother the Sun stays the longest in the sky. It had not been possible for him to sleep, even with his new stick held in his hands. "Dasene," he whispered to the stick. "Defender, soon it will be the day. Then we will play the game together. It does not matter if our side wins or loses, but I ask you to help me to play well. Help me to play in a way that is pleasing to our Creator, the one who gave us this sacred game. Help me to play in a way that will bring health to Thunder's voice." Ohkwa'ri sat up and swung his feet onto the earth. No one else was awake yet, it seemed. He made his way quietly over to the central hearth and sat beside it. He still held Defender cradled in the crook of one arm. He put his other arm out to hold his hand over the glowing embers, which were all that remained of the cooking fire from the night before. Soon people would be up. They would add wood to this hearth and to the other hearths up and down the big longhouse, and the good smells of wood smoke and of food cooking would fill the great building. But now, Ohkwa'ri thought, pulling his hand back from the fire and grasping the stick again, I'm the only one awake. Even as he thought this, it seemed as if his stick, Defender, grew warmer and moved in his hands. It was such a surprising thing to feel that it made him look to his side. Someone who had moved on very quiet feet was standing there in the shadows close by. Defender had warned him. But it was no one to fear. It was his grandmother. She came forward and knelt beside him. She held a large shell in one hand and a brush made of the hair of a deer's tail in the other. "Grandchild," She Opens the Sky said, "it is good that you are up so early. Now I will not have to hurry as I paint your face. You want me to paint a frog on your nose, is that not right?" Ohkwa'ri started to open his mouth to protest. Then he shut it. His grandmother was teasing him. He smiled at her with his eyes, and she smiled back. "Hank, grandchild," She Opens the Sky said, "it will be a bat on your forehead." "And a flying squirrel on my forehead," said Otsi as she sat down next to her brother. It was late in the morning when everyone gathered at the place where the game would be played. The 2 posts which were to be struck by the ball to make a score had been set up in the long stretch of meadow and woods along the river. The posts were so far apart that when you stood at one, you could not see the other one. The game would be played through the woods as well as in the meadow, and there were no firm lines to either side, although the river and the hills which loomed above them served as final boundaries. As Ohkwa'ri walked to join those on his team, he looked at all of the people. Men and women and children of all ages were lined up on either side of the huge playing field. It was clear that word of the game had traveled fast and far. There were people gathered to watch the game who must have walked all through the night to reach the field. There were not only many people from the Turtle Clan village and the Wolf Clan village of their Flint Nation. There were also Longhouse people from the Oneida, the Standing Stone people, and from the Onondaga, the firekeepers of the Great League, those who lived among the hills. There were even some Mohican and Anantak people who had come from the lands toward the dawn to watch the game. Ohkwa'ri saw that some of the beautiful white Anantak birch-bark canoes were pulled up on the shore below the village. He recognized the people by the strange way they dressed. One of them was especially noticeable, for he was very tall, and he wore a headpiece made of the scalp of a bear. A necklace with many bear claws hung around his neck. Ohkwa'ri had seen that Anantak man before, when he came to trade. His Uncle Big Tree had told him that that man was a healer, and that the costume he wore meant he specialized in bear medicine. Although it was said that the game would begin at dawn, everyone knew it would not start that quickly. Elder brother the sun had said to be especially fond of Tequaratan, so a game would not begin until he was high enough in the sky to be able to see everything clearly. People also needed time to gather at the field, and the players needed to do the things necessary to be ready. Ohkwa'ri walked around their village and watched what other players, young and old, were doing. Some were rubbing special oils into their sticks. Some were tying good luck charms around their necks and their arms and legs. Some were stretching and exercising, or running back and forth to make themselves sweaty before beginning the game. From a distance, Ohkwa'ri saw Grabber and his friends. It was not only Eats Like a Bear, Greasy Hair, and Falls a Lot who were gathered together with Grabber this morning. Perhaps as many as 20 young men were sitting in a circle as Grabber spoke to them, telling them how they would organize their attack. Ohkwa'ri took special note of the young men in Grabber's group. Grabber was not the official leader of the young men's team, but it was clear that he was going to lead his own little team within the team. All of them had painted their faces like Grabber's, with one half of their face red and the other half chalky white. It would be easy to recognize them. And, Ohkwa'ri thought, it would be easier for me to avoid being surprised by them during the game. Ohkwa'ri knew that his team of old men included his father and other grown men who were aware of the fact that Grabber wanted to hurt him. They would do what they could to protect him, but they would not always be wherever he was. Tequaratan was a game that moved too quickly for anyone to always know where everyone was. Ohkwa'ri would have to defend himself. "But you will help me," Ohkwa'ri said to Defender, shaking his new stick in front of himself as he walked. People were talking and shouting, but he could no longer hear what they were saying. His eyes were on the field and his thoughts on the game about to begin. The teams were gathering now, near the center of the field. His uncle Big Tree was the one who would begin the game. He stood there holding the ball and waiting patiently for everyone to be ready. It was a new ball, made of deer hair bound tightly together by a covering of deerskin sewed in with sinew. It was the size of a man's fist and very hard. Players sometimes lost teeth or were knocked out when they were hit by a ball that they failed to catch. Everyone on the field was dressed much like Ohkwa'ri was dressed. Aside from charms to bring luck and the decoration of paint or tattoos, all that anyone wore was a tightly belted loincloth. Also some, like Ohkwa'ri, wore tightly laced moccasins, although there were many men who preferred to play barefooted. Such barefooted players did not have to worry about a broken lace or a torn moccasin. Ohkwa'ri moved toward the place where Wide Awake, who was the leader of the old men's team, was gathering the players. Soon all of the old men, Ohkwa'ri among them, sat or stood in a series of closely packed circles around Wide Awake to listen to his idea. Some of the so-called old men were actually quite young, for one was called an old man only if he was the father of a child. The two sides would be evenly matched. Like a war raid, a game of Tequaratan would be carefully planned before it started. But just like war, no one could ever predict what would really happen once things began. "These will be our positions," Wide Awake said, drawing patterns in the soft earth. "This group will be like the wolves. They will be the first to see what is happening with the ball, and they will be in the middle of the field at the start. If we get the ball, they will be the ones to lead us." Wide Awake looked about. The men in the group that would be like the wolves understood. When one went out to scout into dangerous territory, that person was sometimes called a wolf, for the wolf knows how to move swiftly and is always alert. Ohkwa'ri had been selected to be part of that group because he was such a swift runner. He looked around at the other men in his group, feeling proud to be among the leaders. This second group, Wide Awake continued, making further marks on the ground. And the third group, they will be like the red-tailed hawks and the wide-winged hawks. They will sweep from one side to the other of the field behind the wolves. When the game begins, they will see who has the ball and then either move forward if we are attacking or move back. As we have done before, they will go from side to side, but we will never leave one side of our field open. Again, Wide Awake paused. Ohkwa'ri noticed how all the men paid attention and no one spoke. These men had played Tequaratan many times, and they understood the game. although it might seem confused to someone watching who did not understand the game. There were always plans being followed. Our fourth group, Wide Awake, said, "You are like the real bears. You are the ones who will stay the closest to our goal to guard it. This is the way you will play until the first goal is scored against us. When that happens and the ball is then given to us at our end of the field, look to me for instruction. I will have my hand raised high with my stick in my hand. If you cannot find me, look to two ideas. At some point in the game, we will have our wolves and our real bears change their positions. That way neither group will grow too tired." Wide Awake looked around the circles yet again. This time a few men spoke. They were experienced players, and they made simple suggestions or comments about what they expect from certain of the players on the young men's team. Ohkwa'ri listened closely to everything that was said. They had played Ohkwa'ri before, and watched the older men players more than once, but he had never been part of a game as large as this. There was so much to learn, even about the things that seemed the simplest. He had learned much in the past by watching the way the best players held their sticks or feinted with their heads. "We are ready," Wide Awake said at last. He stood up and then struck the earth with the butt end of his ballgame stick. It made a deep thump. He struck the earth again, and all the other men on the team of the old men did the same. This time the sound was so deep and loud that the earth beneath them vibrated like a drum. He began to move, shuffling his feet in a dance step, and the other men moved in line behind him. Their feet added to the rhythm of the sticks that still thumped the earth. They were moving in a great circle that included all of the 100 men on their team. They moved calmly as they danced and struck the earth, but Ohkwa'ri felt the excitement that went around that circle. He felt the power, too. It was not the thought of winning or losing that excited everyone. It was the desire that everyone felt to play this game well, that filled their every movement with such strength. They danced toward the side of the field where Thunder's voice sat, and Ohkwa'ri noticed two things as they danced closer. He noticed that the old man was sitting even taller than he had been at the meeting the day before, and he saw that the eyes of Thunder's voice were directly on him. Ohkwa'ri tried to hold his back even straighter as he danced, honoring the old man who had chosen him to play in his place. Now Wide Awake sang, "Hoyane, Hoyane," all of the old men dancing in the circle, which moved in the opposite direction from elder brother the sun, answered him, "We Hoyane." They continued singing, their voices joining together with such strength that it seemed to Ohkwa'ri that everything in creation was singing with them. So they danced and sang their way to the middle of the field where Big Tree stood, waiting to start the game. He held the ball high above his head, with both hands now. It was the sign that all preparations were over. It was the sign that Ohkwa'ri was about to begin.